Hello and welcome, everyone. We are so excited that you're joining us today. We're going to give everyone just a minute here to get joined. If you are joining us, you can mute yourself and turn your camera off unless you would love us to see your faces, but we will be sharing our screen today. So if it's easier for you to have your camera off, we invite you to do so. Okay. Well, it looks like we've got people joined. We might still hear that beep from the lobby every now and again. But welcome to Accounting 360. We are so excited to have you joining us today. Um, to introduce you to our speakers, my name is Carrie Haugen. I am the campus recruitment manager here at Eide Bailly. You're also going to see some faces pop in throughout the rest of the day. So we have Chelsea Knar, Corinne Strapp, and then Rachel Schumacher. You won't see her on camera, but she is going to be in our chat and keeping an eye on that. So if you have questions as we go through the content today, please put them in the chat. Rachel can get back to you. Otherwise, we'll be doing some time for Q&A at the end. I also want to share just some brief housekeeping items, but while I do that, I would love for you in the chat, if you're in a space where you can participate, we would love for you to chat. What's the first thing that you think of when you hear accounting? So throw that in the chat, and while you're doing that, I'll run through some housekeeping items. The first being, we have our program available to you today. That was emailed to you on Friday and again this morning. That program is just helpful information as we go through content today. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar. So if you are looking to share this with maybe people in your classes or a friend, you will get a recording afterwards. And then we will ask that at the end of the event today that you take our survey. That's really helpful for us as we plan out this content for future events, just to know what was helpful, what wasn't. So invite you to share your feedback at the end of the event through our survey. Okay, well, our agenda today is we're going to chat a little bit just about who Eide Bailly is. We might be a new company for you to learn about. And so we're going to just dive into a little bit of that background, but then we're really going to get into the content of the day, which is talking all about what is accounting, what are the types of education paths that you can seek in accounting, what is the CPA, what does that mean, how do you pursue it, different types of careers that you can pursue, and then here are some things that you can do after the webinar today to keep learning. So to get us started, let's talk about who Eide Bailly is. So, Eide Bailly was founded in 1917. We are a CPA and business advisory firm, which is fancy terms for we're public accountants, but we also offer a variety of other services to our clients. If you're not super familiar with public accounting, we're going to get into the ins and outs of that today. So don't worry if you haven't heard of that before, aren't familiar. Eide Bailly's footprint, we have over 50 offices. You can see on the map here, all those blue dots are where our locations are at. So we have a lot in the Midwest and out to the West Coast, and we're slowly starting to crouch into the East Coast. But lots of offices and sitting at about 3,500 staff members and 425 partners. So again, when you think about that in terms of people, we have a big footprint across the country. We are a top 20 firm, so CPA firms are ranked in terms of their annual revenue. So right now we're sitting in that top 20, which is something we're really proud of, and coming in at about 705 million in annual revenue. These are things that we live and breathe. So our mission is to be one connected firm. And that means as you look at that map and you see all those different locations, you see all the places where we are at and how do we stay connected as a firm so that we are offering great client service to our clients. We also want to serve our communities, and we do that through impactful doing. So growing our people, giving them opportunities, elevating our clients. So really being that trusted partner to those clients that we work with, and then strengthening our communities. So that might look like volunteering in our communities, doing webinars like this to help educate, in a variety of other ways. And then our values, you can kind of see that they spell out impact, but this is what we live and breathe. So it's things like integrity, so doing what is right instead of what's fast and easy. Really a big focus on people. That's in those meaningful relationships with each other, with our colleagues, with our clients, and a focus on our people. It's important that we have people here that know they can grow, that they can learn. Authenticity, we want people to show up as they are, who they are, and not feel like they have to hide themselves at work. And then culture and trust. So really just defining how we work together, that we trust one another, we rely on one another, and we give that same trust to our clients that we work with too. When you look at who we are, as I mentioned, we're a CPA and business advisory firm. So we're pretty equal when it comes to tax and assurance or audit. And those are those core compliance driven services within a public accounting firm. We do have about 25% of what we just call our consulting services. So that is where students maybe get a little bit more excited about some of those, where it's things like our fraud and forensics, business valuation, technology consulting, specialty tax and assurance teams. So there's a lot more there. And we typically are seeing people start their career in a more compliance driven field like tax or assurance. And then as they specialize and progress in their career, moving on into maybe some of those other consulting areas. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Chelsea, who is going to dive a little bit more into what is accounting. And you all kind of started when you put this in the chat. So Chelsea, over to you.
Thanks, Carrie. So yes, I'm going to be sharing with you, the question really is, what is accounting? And I'm going to break that down into 3 different areas. And what those kind of mean are recording, organizing and summarizing, and then using the information. And so the first one, recording, that's really keeping track of the money that's coming in and going out. Accounting really helps with budgeting, planning, saving, making smart money decisions all year round, maybe not just in those seasons that we might think of when we think about accounting. So organizing and summarizing, this is putting all of that information into categories, making reports based on those categories, and then telling the story of the money. I often hear when I talk to interns and entry-level folks getting into this field, that's one of their favorite parts, is being able to share the story. And then using that information. So making decisions based on those numbers. You don't have to be a math genius or a math person that's super strong in that area. You're really going to use basic addition, subtraction, and logic. But I typically have folks that really enjoy math in some way. So what accounting is not. These might be things that you've heard, maybe some stereotypes in the industry. So what accounting is not is we're not boring number crunching folks. So accounting is not endless equations. It's more of about financial strategy that helps set by the business that is supporting the data, supporting those numbers, using those numbers to solve business problems. There's a lot of problem solving that takes place and working with people. So you already heard that Carrie shared that we are a people business. And so working with people to be strategic, to make those decisions, to solve those problems. So it is not only for big businesses and taxes. So this is not something that just corporations do. Students, families, school clubs, or small businesses all use it as well. And it's not just math. So going back to not just having to be a genius in math, it's not just spreadsheets. It can feel like detective work at times. So finding out where the money went, and then again, that problem solving, that planning, and then helping people make the best decisions for them. So we are going to touch on, and we've already touched on a few of these. You've heard this throughout the introduction, but I want to make sure we all know the terms that we're going to be talking about for the rest of the presentation. So again, accounting is the language of business. So this could be recording, analyzing, interpreting that financial information, those numbers, to help people and companies make the best decisions for them, solve those problems. A CPA is a certified public accountant. So this is the licensed credentials for accountants. The AICPA is the Association for the Certified Public Accountants. We've talked about audit, tax, and advisory. So audit is checking financial records to make sure they're accurate and reliable, while tax is advising and preparing returns for individuals or businesses. And then advisory is that helping companies make and improve strategy, operations, and then technology. 2 different terms here. So public accounting, much like Eide Bailly, you work for a firm that serves many clients. The exposure has multiple industries. And then you'll often hear that a partner is an owner or a top leader in that firm. And then private accounting is more on the corporate sector, working inside of one company. So think of Target, Nike, local hospitals that manage only their finances within those corporate areas. Someone that you will hear in that area is a controller, similar to a partner, but a controller oversees that company's specific accounting department. And with that, I'm going to send it back to Carrie.
Yes, thanks, Chelsea. When we talk to students, whether it's someone in high school, maybe someone that's just starting their academic journey into college, one of the things we want to talk about is how do you pursue accounting? What does that look like? And so we're going to pivot into kind of talking about the education that goes into accounting. But the first thing that I want to do is set the stage. We get asked, or what I think we hear a lot as recruiters is accounting and finance being used interchangeably. And that's what we want to clear the air about a little bit because when it comes to a career, accounting and finance are actually very different things. So, on the accounting side, and these are some of the highlights that Chelsea already talked about, but it really comes down to that recording, reporting, classifying those financial transactions. So, think of every time you swipe your credit card, looking at all of those transactions. And then, if you are looking at it from maybe a business side, it's preparing those financial statements that really show what's happening in the business. As well as from the public accounting side, it's things like those audits, verifying that those records are accurate, as well as tax returns, which every corporation, most individuals have to do. It also goes to that budgeting piece, looking again, tracking those expenses. So really looking at what is the money doing. Um, and doing that maybe on a monthly or quarterly basis. And so when we think about accounting, think a little bit more past focused. So it's looking at what happened with our money. Is it accurate? And then you can start to think more futuristic. So now that we know what happened in the past, what could we do differently? How do we want to strategize with this? And that's where some of those business decisions come into play. If you're a business owner, you know what happened with your money. You might call your accountant to talk about new pricing, a new opening up a new shop, doing some of those different things that are more strategic driven. On the flip side, finance is more about the planning, managing, and growing of money. So we have this money and we want to get it to be more. And it has to do with more of the risk side. So those things like investments or like the valuation side of a business, understanding what is the business worth. Building financial models for decision making. So it's not necessarily looking as much at the past of what happened, but here's a financial model that we can use to make those decisions. And it's more futuristic focus. So what do we want to do with all of our money going forward? Do we want to invest it? Do we want to sell this business to make more money? What are those things that we want to do going forward? So they are pretty different. And some of the main differences will show up in the education that you get in a degree program. So for example, we often will see students who come and talk to us and say, I want to be a CPA, but they're going for finance. And there actually isn't enough overlap there where you would have to take additional accounting classes in order to be able to get your CPA. But also, as you develop over time, your career maybe then becomes more similar. So at the early stages, we might see people who go into, an accounting department or a finance department, and then they decide, I'm a little bit further in my career, I want to become a controller. You could probably get to a controller standpoint either from the accounting way or from a finance standpoint or CFO, right? A CFO might be a CPA, or it's someone who took a more financially driven path. So there is some differences there. And so if you're a student who's looking into these options or someone who talks to students quite a bit, I would encourage you to dive a little bit deeper into what are those differences? What does someone have the most interest in? Because at that early stage, we are going to see some big differences in the type of work that they are doing. Now, to continue talking about the career path, I'm going to send it over to Corinne. Corinne joined our team about a year and a half ago and actually used to be a career counselor in a high school. So she is a perfect person to talk about this topic.
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, so I think a lot of times when students are thinking about what's next and talking through those goals of education and how long they want to be in school for those goals of careers and things going forward is always important to look at all different sides and aspects of that. So first up, some different education pathways that we have in accounting would be 2-year programs, so those community colleges. Associate's degree in accounting or business, you may see people go into. This could prepare you for entry-level roles right out of that associate's degree, things in bookkeeping, payroll. You may see accounts payable or receivable roles. And oftentimes we'll see maybe an associate's degree in accounting, then transferring into that 4-year university, being able to then waive those general education requirements, get deeper into the curriculum, and pursue that bachelor's in accounting, finance, or business. So kind of like Carrie said, the differences in that education comes into play there, and with what prepares you going forward. So bachelor's degree in accounting, we know that foundation for that CPA, a lot of times those requirements, those prerequisites that we want to see. I'll talk a little bit more about credentials, but you'll see that with that bachelor's of accounting. Finance and business also being kind of adjacent to that you'll see in when you're talking through accounting roles, and specifically in private accounting. So that 4-year degree opens those doors to staff accountant roles in those public and private spaces. Then those graduate degrees. So oftentimes you may hear people think about, or programs advertising their MAC program, so a master's in accounting, an MBA, or a master's in taxation. This can help with the CPA credit requirements. So this is changing in some states, but oftentimes it's 150 credit hours that's required to sit the CPA exam. So typical 4-year bachelor's degree is about 120 credits. To get to that then 150, that's why you'll see some programs advertising a 4+1 program, so a 4-year bachelor's and an added 1 year for that master's or MAC program, to help get to that 150 credit requirement for those CPA licensures. Now, again, some states have gone to 120 credit hours, and that's kind of a new change. So you'll see that maybe being talked about a lot more as you're continuing to explore accounting, if this is a field that's interesting to you. For example, Minnesota has gone that route, and so you'll see differences in requirements for that. And you may see more people just pursuing that bachelor's degree because they're able to get all of those credit requirements and prerequisites through those programs to sit for that CPA. So some things to think about and see that are maybe changing as you dive further into learning about accounting. But in general, those graduate and advanced degrees do help prepare for those leadership roles and advancement within different spaces in private or public. So beyond the classroom, so certifications, there are a lot of different certifications here, and in really any career field, we know certifications come up all over the place, but CPA being one that you've heard us say probably 20 times now, but also you'll continue to see it as you're exploring. So certified public accountants, this is best for that public accounting space. So we really encourage people, students, interns to pursue that CPA early on. It's very widely required for that advancement, being that oftentimes as you progress in your career, certain jobs or projects, clients require that CPA to sign off on things. So that's why it's encouraged. Most public accounting firms, for example, will offer some sort of bonus structure or incentive to get that CPA. Then CMA, so a certified management accountant. This tends to be those corporate industry roles, more of that financial planning and strategy. So that focus on management and decision making. Then we have the chartered financial analyst. So kind of the difference in finance and accounting coming in here. So this is a prestigious certification for those finance careers. We have the IRS EA, so an enrolled agent. So this is tax focused, really focusing on representing taxpayers for the IRS. And then on the other side, we have a certified internal auditor. So we talked about audit within public accounting, but then we also have this certified internal auditor. They're going through risk compliance. It's a globally recognized certification, as is kind of the next 3 you'll see, but we've got certified fraud examiner. We touched a little bit on this within advisory consulting. So fraud and forensic becoming a much more, I think, talked about area. It's definitely kind of one of the more fun sounding roles and areas within accounting, things that we don't think about often. Some movies or TV shows with forensic accountants kind of playing that up a little bit. But in here, we've got those certified fraud examiners, and in fraud and forensics. It's a growing demanding field. And so this is something that kind of sets you apart. So when you are interested in that, those certifications can help. And then lastly, that chartered global management accountant. So this is again, a global business kind of focusing on that global area. This credential is a joint credential. And so really focusing on that management leadership strategy, kind of all aspects of that area. You may see finance and accounting kind of working together in here. So how to become a CPA. So like we said, CPA is kind of the most well-known and probably the credential that you're going to hear talked about the most when you think about going into accounting. So to become a CPA, I discussed those credit hours. And so it varies by state, but in general, we'll just say maybe you need 150 credit hours. So it requires that bachelor's degree and 150 credit hours. So that would be roughly 30 extra credits beyond the bachelor. So that's where people are maybe taking those extra prerequisites, non-degree seeking, or they're enrolling in a MAC program for those requirements. After that, you need to pass 4 to 5 exam sections. So that varies by state. And you can take this while finishing school. So sometimes we'll have interns who will have taken 1 or 2 exams before their internship or during that school progression. Then that work experience comes into play, and you need 1 to 2 years under a licensed CPA and to gain that real world accounting experience. Beyond that, you apply for your CPA license, you've finished all those exams, you've completed everything that you need to, and then there's that continuing education. So just like teachers on the call here, I know you probably are well aware of that continuing education or CPE requirements. That's what is also included in a CPA. So accounting careers. So we'll dive a little bit more into private and public. So as we kind of look through that career progression, you'll notice some similarities here. So we've got that staff accountant. So that's that entry level. So this is in private accounting when you're looking at, a local business, for example, or maybe we've got a local hotel and you've got an accounting department for them. So you've got that entry level staff associate or accountant moving, then maybe you've been there for a few years, that senior accountant moving into an accounting manager, then perhaps that controller, and then that CFO. So that can kind of look like career progression within that private accounting space. And then in the flip side, similar, you see that public accounting. And so here it's pretty streamlined with that. We sometimes refer to it as a path to partner. And so you come in as an associate, likely you maybe have done an internship, go to an associate, senior associate within 2 to 4 years, manager, senior manager, and then partner. And often you can see down there, there's exit opportunities for private accounting jobs. So you may see people go into public accounting to start. I think this has kind of traditionally been the conversation, public accounting, and then you're working with clients, you're getting to know different areas. And maybe then you're exiting when you're in that maybe mid-senior level to different roles as you progress and get to know these clients and have that opportunity as well. So those careers within here, we'll talk about adjacent careers too. You can kind of see in that third column, but within a firm, what you actually may be doing. So in that public accounting, like Eide Bailly, we've got those compliance-driven areas, like Carrie said, assurance and tax. So oftentimes that's the majority of the business. You'll see a lot of interns hired within those spaces, as well as client accounting services. And client accounting services is likely one that maybe you're a little less familiar with. This is one that I've heard it be described as private accounting in a public accounting firm, which I think is so interesting to kind of think about. So this is really outsourced accounting. So maybe that hotel I talked about needs some additional support. They may come to a firm like Eide Bailly and utilize our client accounting services. So that team could provide bookkeeping for them. They could provide payroll. Maybe they have lost their CFO and they just need a stand-in CFO for some time. That's something that client accounting services area may provide. Other things inside a firm, forensic accounting, fraud investigation, like we talked about, kind of that buzzword fun area to explore, business valuation, advisory. So those are those really strategy operations, those kind of risk within there, and then tax law collaboration. So you can see it says accountants often work closely with tax lawyers. Now, on the flip side, in that corporate private area, you've got your staff accountant. They're contributing to companies' accounting department. You're kind of working all together within there. You may still work with an external firm like Eide Bailly for an audit, for example. Most places, schools need audits, right? Then we've got the controller who's overseeing that entire accounting department. CFO, so they're managing that finance of that company. And then really the main thing is you're specializing in the industry that you work. So really the business that you work for, that hotel, for example, you're getting a lot of experience within that hospitality area. So there's different types of taxes, laws, all sorts of different things within that area that you then kind of become an expert in that specific industry. And then after public accounting, so these are kind of those adjacent areas, maybe working within a firm, getting kind of that broad exposure to a lot of different industries, finding some different areas that are really piquing your interest, startups, entrepreneurship, transferring those skills into that consulting role, and then government or policy work. So that is kind of those adjacent areas where maybe you've done a lot of work within that space in a firm and moving into that, and then teaching and different areas within academia. So the outlook for public accounting is always something that I've heard a lot of students actually be quite aware of this fall on campus. I've been kind of excited to see at the university level a lot of students talking about the growth, which is great. I'm glad people are doing the research. So there is a 6% growth by 2033. So less than 10 years from now, that 6%, it's faster than the average of all occupation, really translating to 92,000 jobs. And I know we see it across the firm. We're hiring, we're looking for entry-level talent, especially to kind of grow through the firm with us, especially with, we have a lot of partners and people age and there'll be retirements, and we got to always consistently fill that pipeline. Same with in every business. We know there's accounting within every single business, public or private. So there's going to always be stability here. Starting out salaries really vary by location. You can see kind of in small, medium cities that starting is probably around 60K. So this is for that bachelor's, 4 years, kind of that area of salaries. In larger cities, we're looking at, at 70,000. Big markets, probably around 80 for that starting. So there's that career progression path to partner. I'm going to talk a little bit more about salaries in the upcoming slide, but really how this role evolves in accounting tends to be that early career. You're kind of going through that first draft of work. You're learning and you're really supporting your teams. Mid-career, you probably are starting to kind of own client relationships, probably the lead on some different audits or different roles with that managing of people and developing that expertise. And then once you get to that senior career, that partner, it's really less of the day-to-day. And you see partners really more focusing on that relationship. They're selling the firm, they're bringing in clients and becoming the face more so of the business. So here's that earning potential. So this is something I know everybody wants to see. So earning potential in public accounting, this is kind of varies by the market and firm, but an example to kind of help you think about that progression. So I already said entry level, depending on where you're at, around that 60 to 70, 80 in some of those big markets. Mid-career, so that may be like a senior associate, you're getting up to that 68 to 82. Manager, 82 to 95. Senior manager, you're at 95 to 105, and that partner is 140 plus. So they're making that 6 figures, plus they have that ownership in the company, in the firm. And then really thinking about this, that career growth is just salary growth and wanting that boost. This is kind of a portion where we say CPA can help increase your earning potential 10 to 15% on average, not just in public accounting, but in private too. And like I think I said earlier, most firms, if you're interested in public accounting, do offer some sort of incentive for that CPA. So some sort of bonus structure, which is always an increase as well. So now back to Carrie to kind of talk about now what. Hopefully these things are kind of interesting to you, you're pursuing the next step and how you can continue to learn more as a educator or a student.
Yes, thanks, Corinne. We have thrown a lot of information at you in the last 30 minutes. Especially when I talk to high school students, I think it can be a little overwhelming. So we wanted to give you a few places you can start to explore this a little bit deeper. The first one is the AICPA, that Association for Certified Public Accountants that we mentioned earlier, has an amazing website called This Way to CPA. If you search that, I promise you, you will find a vast a vast wealth of resources. And a great thing about that website is that they have content for both students and educators. So if you are an educator looking for activities for your classroom or resources or even some video content from certified public accountants, they have that on their website. And if you are a student, they have options where you can become a student member to get more content. They have different games that you can play to kind of learn your different experience or learn different things about yourself, and so much more. There is a vast amount of resources on that website. So I strongly encourage you to go explore and just dive deeper into what is accounting. The other thing is to start to think about that right college for you, especially if you are in high school. And it, like I said earlier, it can feel like a lot of pressure to make that decision. There's so much that goes into that. And so even if it's just saying, I want to start at a 2-year, you can always take that 2-year degree and go into a 4-year, like Corinne had mentioned. But it's starting to look at those different programs around you in the city that you live in. There are tons and tons of amazing programs. And if you're ever wondering which ones that Eide Bailly partners with in, near you, you can reach out to one of our recruiters. That information is in your program, and they can share these are some of the programs that we partner with when it comes to hiring our interns and entry-level talent. But the other thing that you can do beyond just finding a specific school or university is to start building some of those essential skills. And there's a few that I want to highlight today. The first being Microsoft Excel. This is a skill that accountants, and truthfully, even myself in human resources, and I'm sure any other profession could say the same, we use this every single day. In your program, there is a one pager that talks about it's a Microsoft Excel guide. So it has some quick formulas that you can learn that our accountants recommended. There's a link to a free course through Coursera that's more basic, and just some other shortcut videos that you can watch. Excel is a really important one. Other things like practicing communication. We talked earlier about how accounting really is people driven. And so being very comfortable talking to people and finding ways to start to communicate those bigger money problems right into the story. What is the money telling me? And so you can do that even when you're in high school. Start to get involved in different things that push you out of your comfort zone a little bit, make you communicate with different people. Um, and then things like just learning. I think coming to something like this is such a great start to learn more about the field itself, but exploring even further beyond what our team is giving you as information today. The last one, and this goes into that learning, is connecting with professionals. So whenever we talk to students that are studying accounting, I would say the majority of them found accounting because they knew someone who was in accounting. Maybe it was a parent, a friend, a mentor of theirs, but they knew someone who was in accounting, or they took an accounting class in high school. That's not always available to everyone, and we understand that. And so this is where we really encourage you, if you have an interest in accounting in any way, to try to find an accounting professional to connect with. And that's where my team can come in to help. Like I mentioned, our information is in your packet, and you can reach out to us, and we would be happy to either coordinate a visit for if you're an educator, a class visit to our office, or would be able to give you some names or contact information. We oftentimes will offer job shadowing as long as we can make it work with schedules. But there's also amazing people out there that are, like Corinne and Chelsea mentioned, accountants for big corporations who I am sure would love to also have that opportunity to have a student come and learn more about what they do. So really connecting with professionals is a great place to start, and exploring all the different things that you can do with accounting, because certainly there is not just one thing. There's a million different career paths that you can take. And the best place to start is to explore and learn more. With that, We wanted to leave some time for questions. We have, like I said, we've thrown a lot of information out there today, and we would love to take questions at this time. You can either unmute yourself if it's easier to type in the chat. If you are hosting a watch party and it's you either want to unmute and let us or ask a question or type it in the chat and we can answer as a group. But I'm going to give everyone a minute just to think about questions that they might have, and then hopefully we get some volunteers. I'm going to stop sharing our screen so you can see some faces here. But as I mentioned, any questions that come up when you think of accounting? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'll maybe throw us into the group. I'm going to put my team on the spot here. I have a couple other team members besides just Corinne, Chelsea, and Rachel. So if any of you else want to chime in, but Corinne and Chelsea, obviously you guys are not accountants, but you came from educational backgrounds. You switched into the accounting industry. What would you say was the most surprising thing about the accounting industry when you came in to a new industry from a different environment? Or what's maybe something that you have learned about accounting?
I think for me, Chelsea kind of talked about it when we were thinking about what accounting is not. And I was never good at math. It was a really big struggle for me. But learning more about the different types of accounting, and really, it's not like you need to know how to do all these extreme math problems in your head. It's being able to use the tools and solve problems. One of I talked to an audit professional once, and they were explaining that auditing is really just like grading papers. And so that was something that I could kind of use and think about in previous professions to understand how they're kind of looking through and really just grading papers of how businesses have ran their finances. So kind of interesting, I think, to think about that comparison. And it's definitely way different than what I expected accounting to be.
That's a great call. And I love that comparison of grading papers. That's something that even if you are not a teacher or educator, you can probably understand what that means. How about you, Chelsea?
Yeah, I would say so. My background is in higher education, so working with college students on a college campus for some time. And so I think what really surprised me is just how much support there is at the higher education level for folks that are figuring out a career in accounting. And so not only are career centers super supportive in that space too, but there's a lot of different opportunities to meet the firms on your campus, to interview on campuses, in-house programming. So in our offices, we offer kind of those introductory programs. So you don't have to have it all figured out when you do get to college, or even as you're exploring in your later years in high school. There's opportunities to get connected and to learn. And so there was a few things touched on around job shadowing and things. And so I was just surprised how much support and resources are there in this field specifically. And I echo Corinne around some of those like stereotypes around a boring career. I would say being in my offices, the folks that I'm interacting with, it's been a really fun experience to get to know and learn more about accounting myself.
Yes, thanks, Chelsea. That's such a good call out. That's why we all have jobs, right? Is to create that programming and make those opportunities available for students to learn. We have some good questions in the chat. So one of them was we talked about starting salaries, but we didn't talk about what that looks like. So would love if one of you wants to touch on at that entry level, what does work hours look like, and maybe touch on how that might different between public and private accounting, and then just talking more about work-life balance, which I'm sure we can all kind of touch on what that looks like. So I don't know. I know, Corinne, you kind of touched on the salaries if you want to take this one.
Yeah. I think this can definitely vary based on where you're at and what you're doing. So, you've probably heard of busy season. So it's like a dreaded, scary word, I think a lot of people think of. So busy season in that work balance or lack of work-life balance, I think is the stereotype there. But really, depending on where you're at, could be kind of cyclical in that I've heard some accountants talk about, yep, they have their busy season. It's, 3 months long or whatever it may be, depending on the industry that they're serving. And then the rest of the year is normal. So it's like kind of with teaching, for example, you've got your 9 months and then you've got your 3 months off. So kind of that cyclical space. So that busy season, you may be looking at an average of probably around 55 hours a week during that busy season, 40 to 55, maybe just depending on the work. But that's kind of that work-life balance where I know people think of it being pretty difficult. And during tax season, certainly could be if you're in tax, especially. Audit, for example, within a private or public accounting firm, auditors tend to travel. So thinking about that in terms of work-life balance and how that may be expected of you in terms of hours. Private accounting tend to be more of that typical 40-hour work week that you may see again, of course, those busy times of that busy season, probably varying there as well too. Anything else to note? Kind of, I guess, suppose too, you could say as career progresses, that partner being maybe expected to put in extra hours and building those relationships. And so that hour expectation potentially going up as you progress in your career. Anything else to note there?
I think something that I think about a lot as I've talked to friends and just connections in other fields. I think regardless of what career path you choose, every career has their own definition of busy season, right? Teachers have certain
Mhm.
times throughout the year where they might have more um, hospitals, like my dad is in healthcare, and there's certain times of year where there's just more activity. And so I think that is, like you said, it's a stereotype, and it's certainly something we talk about because tax season is talked about not just at an accounting firm. Like there's reminders on the news, like make sure you get your taxes done and that sort of thing. So I think it's one that people just hear it talked a lot about. But even on the private side, right, as campus recruiters, like we're not in public accounting, but we have our busy season. So I think it is something to just be thinking about that regardless of what field you go into, you're going to have those peaks and valleys. Um, and then I also think the public accounting field has come a long way when it comes to that work-life balance and really making sure we have benefits and systems in place to allow for you, even in those busy seasons, to step away from work or find that reprieve because we don't want anyone to burn out. That's not how we get people into, a lifelong career of this. So just things to be thinking about as don't take that as your reason not to pursue it if it's something you really would be interested in, because I think you'll find that regardless. We got a question about, accounting careers in other fields besides business, which yes, a blanket statement there is 100% there's accounting careers outside of business. And so Rachel, if you're able to, Rachel is kind of manning our chat, but I'm going to have her come and speak. She hires for a lot of our consulting services. And so I would love for you just to touch on that piece, Rachel, of the different types of roles that you might hire for and how those differ from like stereotypical accounting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, exciting stuff. I always get excited to talk about. I know my roles are a little bit different than traditional audit and tax roles, but I do still get the pleasure of hiring a lot of accountants. And, one thing I'll kind of reference. So, I hire for technology consulting in our advisory services. Within our advisory services, there might be some groups that you're a little bit more familiar with, kind of under our national tax umbrella, especially if you kind of understand accounting and understand that work. In our national tax umbrella, we do mainly hire accountants. In our advisory group outside of that national tax umbrella, we still look for accountants. We also look for healthcare consulting and other different kind of roles like that. Sometimes you have some technical skills. Sometimes maybe you're in a different major group, but we do still want some of the fundamentals that you would learn in the accounting major while we're hiring for those groups. As far as technology consulting goes, we also still hire accountants. We do hire outside of that as well, right? We talk through management information systems and computer science students. There's internships for marketing or HR or different things like that as well. So don't feel like Eide Bailly is only accounting. By all means, we definitely have roles for people who are not accounting majors. And we do occasionally have positions for finance students as well. One thing I will mention is that I get the pleasure of working with our technology consulting groups, and they always talk about how they found their way into Eide Bailly. We have a big presence of technology consulting groups that were previously successful businesses that ended up being acquired by Eide Bailly, but really sold to Eide Bailly because of the mission, the vision, the values that Eide Bailly holds, and wanting to give their people better resources to work on bigger projects and work on better clients and things like that. And so one of the things that they always mentioned to me is they felt really strongly about joining a firm like Eide Bailly, not only because of the culture, like I mentioned, but really because accountants are that business advisor, that all-seeing eye in a sense. They are the person that you're going to that is going to be able to understand the past and definitely help your business continue to grow. And so they always say they feel the most confident going to a firm like Eide Bailly that's known for the CPA work because that is your business consultant. That is the person that's going to advise you. They are the one-stop shop, the tell-all be-all, the person who can give you that kind of like really concrete advice. And so I always feel like that's interesting when I work with them and they gave me that perspective. It almost put another level of respect on our accounting staff for me, especially since I don't necessarily work in those audit and tax regions. Not sure if I answered your question, Carrie, but we do hire
Yeah.
outside of accounting. It's just, I love to talk about the side of, technology consulting that also loves being a part of the accounting industry.
Yes, I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Rachel, that it's so much more than what you just might think. And the other part of that too, the question was like, are there accounting careers in other fields besides business, like government, healthcare, et cetera?
Mhm.
Yes, like Chelsea, I think mentioned earlier, like there is accounting everywhere. We think
Mhm.
of government, right? Like the FBI hires accountants. They talked about those fraud and forensics. And you maybe don't start your career at the FBI, maybe you do, but you might start with some of those, a different role where you are understanding those fundamentals, and then you can move into something like that. Or the IRS, like those might be accountants, right? Like there's those different types of roles. We mentioned that hospital example. They have an accounting department, the billing department, right? If you go to the hospital, like someone has to work with those insurance departments. That's likely their accounting department. But also think of nonprofits. If you're someone who's really passionate about giving back, every nonprofit needs accountants for their board of directors. They need that person who has the understanding of financials. We often see a lot of our accountants become either that, board representative for accounting or even board presidents because they are someone who understands that language and can help make sure that that nonprofit is going to stay on their feet and continue to give to their mission. So really accounting is everywhere. Even if you're someone who is sitting in a classroom right now, your school has an accounting department. It might be one person, but your school has someone that is doing these functions day in and day out. So it truly is everywhere that you look, even if it doesn't have the title accountant tied to it. It is everywhere. Two questions that kind of go hand in hand talking about technology. So we mentioned Excel, but what are those other tools that get used and how is AI going to affect the accounting field? So I want to touch on this one just a little bit and then I'll throw it to my team to see if they have anything to add to it. But yes, Excel is not the only tool that accountants use. Sometimes those tools vary by firm. So, for example, there's certain ones that we might use, different softwares, but I think AI is becoming a big part of the conversation. That's probably in any role at this rate, not just public accounting, but we at Eide Bailly are diving into Microsoft Copilot. That's one of the main AI tools that we are currently using. And with that, it is helping us when we think about entry level accounting roles. It's kind of two parts. AI certainly is a tool to help accountants do their job more efficiently. That's kind of with any role, including our own roles. There's elements to that where it's helping us, some of those things in Excel. We're able to do them a lot faster because we don't have to do them manually anymore. But on the other side of it, there are parts of an entry level role that AI can take, and I do not want that to come off as that job is being eliminated. That is not the case at all. Instead, we as firms and as an industry are pivoting into the training methods for someone coming in at an entry level role, where instead of maybe having to do is that first draft prepare like Corinne mentioned, it's now becoming that first draft is done. Now you get to use your review skills and you're double checking and you're looking into things and you're using more of a strategic approach to it than having to just do those tasks day to day. And I wouldn't say that we're fully there yet as an industry, right? Like we haven't completely wiped out the entry level roles that have to do this preparation, but I think eventually there will be pieces that we don't have to do. And if you ask a lot of those accountants, that's probably not the part of the job that they enjoy the most anyways. It's right, that's the stuff that takes the most time. And so if we can find tools that allow them to do that faster, and then they can use their critical thinking skills and strategic planning and different things to help dive into those a little bit more and make better business decisions with our clients, I think that's where we're going to see that transition happening. But it certainly does change the type of skills that we need as accountants. And there's still going to be that element of math and making sure, math isn't the core piece of it as we've talked about, but I'd say we're going to lean a little bit deeper into the critical thinking and the communication and being able to strategize and talk about the numbers in a different way. So just things to be thinking about. Don't panic. Accounting's not going anywhere, as Corinne talked about. It's just going to help us do things a lot more efficiently and be able to use our skills in a different way. We're getting closer to the end here, and so I want to talk about, or maybe one, how we'll end. So if anyone else has additional questions, you can throw them in the chat. We probably have time for like one or two more, but um, for my recruiters on the call, Chelsea and Corinne, what makes you, when you're talking to a student, why would you recommend accounting over maybe a different business career, like, or not business career, but thinking about school? Why would you choose accounting over just general business, or, sales pitch a little bit here? We got to convince them before they hop off the call today why they should go into accounting.
I'm going to grab it before Corinne because I know she's going to just knock it out of the park. I would say the diversity in the work. I often hear from my students that are, just starting to go into the field. They are excited about multiple industries, and I'm going to specifically plug, because Carrie said I'm selling public accounting here. So working with multiple clients, working with multiple industries, the work is exciting. There is potential for travel if that is something you're interested in with our assurance area. And so I would say just having an opportunity to get your hands in a lot of things. There's a lot of opportunities for growth and development. If something isn't a quite fit, there's always opportunity to pivot into something else and to dig deeper into maybe a different industry or a different area. And so there's a lot of diversity and the people. I would say the people is the exciting part. It's not just numbers. It's working with people. It's working with teams. It's working with clients. And so if all of those things that sound exciting to you, it's definitely a career to explore.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Yeah, you snuck in there and took all the good stuff. No, I think additionally, something to think about too. I think in the past it's been, maybe I'm not quite sure what I want to do, so I'll just major in business. But really switching to maybe thinking about, okay, majoring in accounting, because it keeps you competitive and it gives you a lot of different areas and routes you can go. We've talked about public accounting. We want you to have an accounting degree, but it keeps you competitive. Maybe if you decide that's the route for you, but maybe if you don't, well, you still have an accounting degree that's going to be very competitive and appealing to people in a variety of different tasks. So really being able to explore different areas. I think that's something that in the past we've always, the message was, do something general so that you have options and opportunities to go different places if you don't know what your dream job is, right? But I think accounting is one that could apply to that and be better in this case, because it's just a much more demanding field and again, just kind of keeps you competitive.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both for that great information. And I want to leave everyone today with, you don't have to have it all figured out. We've shared so much information today, and it might feel a little bit overwhelming, or if you are someone that is in high school and you're trying to think about, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? Like, take that pressure off, that this is a stepping stone, right? To start learning that information, but you do not have to have it all figured out today, tomorrow. Please use us as a resource. Reach out anytime if you have questions or want that connection further. That's what we're here for. And the other side of it is, Corinne talked about that dream job, right? I think we see a lot of people that you start in one thing and you transition into something else. So whether it's you start in public accounting and then eventually you go into private, or you start in private and eventually find your way into public, or all the other various ways that you could go. I started in accounting, made my way to HR and recruiting. So there's so many different paths that you can take. And I think that's just a good way to end it. Just take the pressure off yourselves. You don't have to have it all solved today, tomorrow. You might not know what your dream job is today. Most of us still don't know what our dream job is. So you'll figure it out as you go, and just know that iBailey would be happy to be a trusted resource as you explore more, as well as all those other great resources that we have plugged. So with that, as I mentioned, we do have a feedback survey we would love for you to take. You'll get that in an email within hopefully 24 hours. As soon as we have that recording ready, we'll send you the recording and we'll send you the link to take that survey. It would be so helpful for us to share any information. If you are hosting a watch party, you can send that survey to anyone who joined the watch party. We would love to get all their individual feedback. And a little incentive, if you do take the survey, you are entered to win one of our $50 Amazon gift cards. So if you need some supplies for your classroom, or holidays are coming up faster than we want them to, go buy yourself something fun. So we would love for you to share that feedback with us. Thank you all for joining us. We're so happy that you could take time out of your Monday to be with us, and we wish you all the best as you continue to explore accounting. Thank you all. Have a great day.